We're often told that when it comes to climate change, we have two options. Either we stay hopeful and trust that technology, markets, or future decisions will sort it out, or we face the opposite, that it's already too late and nothing we do really matters. These positions feel completely opposed. They dominate our conversations, our media, even our own inner monologues. But there's a more uncomfortable possibility that I want to explore today. That climate optimism and climate doom aren't opposites at all. They're the same psychological escape, just dressed differently. And if that's true, then stepping out of both can be the most important move we can make. Let's start with optimism, because that's often framed as the more mature and constructive choice. Optimism tells us that progress is already underway, that renewable energy is scaling, that technology is improving, that younger generations care more, vote differently, and will correct the course. To be clear, none of that is false. Optimism is appealing because it allows us to stay engaged without becoming overwhelmed. It protects our mental health and it keeps conversations open. It reassures us that history still bends in a workable direction. And in many spaces, optimism is almost treated as a moral duty, as if acknowledging limits, delays, or failures might itself be dangerous. And there's a reason for that. Societies function on expectations of continuity. Markets, institutions, and political systems operate on the belief that tomorrow will resemble today, just slightly improved. And optimism fits neatly into that story. But the very thing that makes optimism so appealing is also where its risk lies. If optimism is framed as constructive, then doom is often framed as courageous. Doom tells us that we've already crossed critical thresholds, that emissions are still rising, that political systems are moving too slowly, that every year of delay closes options that we won't get back. Again, none of that is false. Doom appeals to people who don't want comforting stories. It feels sober, it feels adult. It feels like finally telling the truth after years of diluting and denial. And for many, it's also a reaction against shallow optimism, against slogans that promise transformation without sacrifice. But doom has its own form of comfort. If the outcome is already decided, then responsibility dissolves. Effort becomes symbolic. Engagement turns into commentary. Doom can feel like realism while actually functioning as resignation. What's striking is that while sounding like opposites, optimism and doom end up doing something remarkably similar. Optimism tells us that change will come, just not quite yet. Doom tells us that change does no longer matter. One defers responsibility to the future, the other declares responsibility as obsolete. Different stories, same outcome. They both allow us to step away from the present. When we're optimistic, it might cause us to wait. When we're doomed, it might cause us to withdraw. In both cases, the hardest work is postponed. Figuring out what responsibility looks like right now under real constraints. So if optimism asks us to wait and doom asks us to withdraw, then stepping out of both is an active decision. And it brings us somewhere less comfortable. It brings us to the present, where we face limits we didn't choose, systems we didn't design, and responsibilities that aren't evenly distributed. And this position doesn't offer reassurance, it doesn't prompt success, and it doesn't excuse disengagement. Instead, it asks a very different question. Given where we actually are in the system, our role, our constraints, our leverage, what does responsibility look like for us right now? Not responsibility as heroism, not responsibility as guilt, but responsibility as orientation, knowing what you can influence and knowing what you can't, and acting without the comfort of guarantees. And this is slower than optimism, and it's harder than doom, but it's also the only position that keeps us present. We spend a lot of time arguing about whether we should feel hopeful or hopeless about climate change, but that argument often distracts from a more uncomfortable task. Learning how to stay present within a system that we didn't choose, while still taking responsibility for how we move within it. Optimism and doom both offer escape. One into the future, the other into resignation. What sits between them isn't inspiring or catastrophic. It is simply the work of alignment. seeing clearly, acting where it matters, and accepting uncertainty without turning away. That's not a story we tell ourselves. It's a position we practice. Thank you for joining me today. See you again soon. Figuring out was